Welcome, everyone. My name is Laura Weaver, and I am with Campus Compact. Thank you for joining us for our latest in our Impact Award series. I'm excited to have you all with us as we are joined by Travis and Nick from the University of Iowa. We're going to be talking to us about their initiative for sustainable communities. As you have questions today for panelists, please feel free to use the raised hand feature if you'd like to ask them directly. And we'll go ahead and recognize you throughout the session. They've said that would be a great way to go ahead and ask questions. Or you can use the chat function or even the Q&A, and either myself or Nick or Travis will go ahead and answer your question throughout the session. We've got a lot of content to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it right on over to Travis and Nick to get us started. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here with us today. And I'm excited to learn more about your initiative at the University of Iowa.
Great. Laura, thanks so much. It's really an honor to be invited to give this webinar to the Campus Compact audience and to have received the 2025 Excellence for the Community Engagement Partnership Award. So I just first of all want to acknowledge and express gratitude for Campus Compact for recognizing the work that we do and the work that other campuses across the nation are doing. So thanks very much. And thank you, Laura, for helping us get set up today. I'm happy to see a lot of names of friends that have joined. So nice to see you all. And thanks to others that have joined as well. So we're from the University of Iowa. We're in Iowa City, Iowa. And we're going to talk today about kind of just like big picture ideas about how our program runs. It's been around for quite a while. So I think in that period of time, we can share about our experiences doing community engagement in the state of Iowa. And hopefully people on the webinar can take away some tips or notes about things that they might consider to implement in their own institutions. I'm really thrilled to be joined by Nick. We've been around since 2009, and we are the two people that have served in the director role for the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities. So thankful to Nick for agreeing to join me on this webinar. So thank you, Nick. My other role on campus is I'm currently the director for the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities, but my other role on campus is professor of practice in the School of Planning and Public Affairs. We have master's degree programs for urban and regional planning and for public policy. So I divide my time between those two things and work closely with Nick, who I'll let you introduce yourself, Nick.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. It's great to see all of you, or to be with all of you virtually. As Travis said, my name is Nick Benson. I work in the Office of Community Engagement at the University of Iowa, but I started my time at the university with the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities back in 2012. And we'll talk a little bit in a second about the initiative and my office and sort of how that's all structured at the University of Iowa. But my job is really to make sure that community engagement is supported and advocated for, and that we do this work well here at the University of Iowa.
So the things that we have in mind for you today are to explain a little bit more about like what engagement looks like at the University of Iowa, and Nick is the best person to speak on that. I'll share a little bit about the framework of like how our initiative operates and the way that we engage partners across the state. But mostly we want to share with you in our 13 years of collective experience working with IISC, some of the things that rise to kind of like the biggest lessons learned that we want to share with you. And as Laura mentioned, please interrupt us if you have questions or want to make comments through the chat or raising your hand. So we will also, make time at the end for Q&A as well.
So as Travis said, we wanted to sort of start out by giving you a little bit of a big picture, sort of an environmental look at sort of what community engagement is like at the universities, so that there's context for where the Initiative for Sustainable Communities sits. the first thing we wanted to sort of just quickly mention is that, you know, many institutions have community engagement in their strategic plans. We certainly have it in ours. And one of the things that I think is maybe a little bit unique about the way our strategic plan works is that we specifically didn't actually create a separate bullet point for community engagement within the plan, but rather we tried to weave community engagement throughout all of our strategic plan. And so as you'll see on the screen, we have basically what we call 5 pillars within within the strategic plan. Many of these are sort of areas that I think probably all of you have in your strategic plan. Like I said, community engagement is woven throughout every single pillar. There's 2 that we're going to kind of call out right now because they align really well with what we're talking about today around the IISC. And that is that we really try to weave community engagement into our teaching and learning at the university. And we see this as an important high impact practice that is valuable for our students, valuable for our faculty, and obviously valuable for our community partners. And the other thing is that we obviously have a goal about, you know, impacting communities, and one of the best ways that we do that obviously is through community engaged teaching and learning programs like the IISC. So there's this broad umbrella support for community engagement at the university that is referenced and can be seen in our strategic plan. And both Travis and I certainly fall back on that. I'm sure all of you do too. We fall back on whenever we're talking about community engagement, whenever we're talking about the IISC, we reference the fact that this work is supported in our institutional strategic plan. So we know that this work is valuable to the institution. Now, the other thing is that, as I mentioned, I work in the Office of Community Engagement, so we're sort of seen as the umbrella sort of hub community engagement office at the university. I work for the provost, so we're based out of the provost office, which means we work with everybody on campus. But one of our big missions is to advocate for and support programs like the IISC. And to make sure that this work is being, you know, is an important part of what we do across campus. We work a lot with Travis around training for our faculty, staff, and students to ensure that we know how to do this work well, that we're doing community engaged work in a way that is beneficial for both us and our campus. But we also work with Travis and others to promote this work and to make sure that people see that this work is valuable. Now, I probably don't have, I'm preaching to the choir here, telling all of you about all of the important values and benefits that come from doing work like the IISC. But just to sort of run through them, we obviously know that this is really valuable for our students in terms of enhanced learning, high impact practices. Community engaged learning is perhaps the highest impact practice for our students. We see a lot of professional skill development that happens, particularly out of programs like the IISC, and I think as we talk a little bit more specifically about this program, you'll see why professional skill development is such an important part of what goes on with this program. The other thing we hear from students is that they have a real sense of purpose with the IISC. And that's not just because they see themselves advancing sustainability in the state, but they see themselves as part of this bigger effort. Hundreds of other students are working on similar projects as them. You know, faculty really value the IISC and community engagement in general because they get a lot of support for their teaching, both from Travis, but also from my office. The other thing that happens is that we see that a lot of times the classes that are a part of this program, not only is it a teaching opportunity, but faculty often then translate that into research opportunities, both for themselves, but also for students. And that's not surprising because the problems that our communities are facing, these are wicked problems that require a lot of attention, both in terms of a classroom experience, but also potentially from research. Our partners have really been buying into this. Our community partners have really been buying into this, partly because they see a lot of opportunity for increased capacity to address the challenges that they're facing today. And a lot of that sort of comes in the form of helping them make decisions about what they want to do next, right? And that's a lot of where our students and faculty can come into play. The other thing we hear over and over again is this idea about 22, 23, 24-year-old students with a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation coming into a community and saying, we've got fresh ideas. And that creativity and innovation is really valued. And then obviously there's financial benefits because students produce really fantastic work that then generates grant revenue, it generates foundation revenue, it generates work that might cost $60,000, $80,000 by a consultant, and it's done by students. So there's a lot of financial benefit. And I would say broadly speaking, at the institutional level and at the state level, the state values this work because it's an opportunity for our students to get to know the state of Iowa and to potentially connect with employers and potentially connect with communities where they might actually have a job after they graduate. And so instead of leaving the state of Iowa after they graduate, they actually stay and work on the very issues that they get to work on through the IISC. And we like to say at the University of Iowa that we're not just the University of Iowa, but we're the University for Iowa. One of the best ways to evidence that is through initiatives like the IISC, where we're taking hundreds of students, putting them in communities across the state in partnership and saying, we want to make a difference here with you. We want to improve quality of life in our communities with you. And so there's a lot of benefit that comes to a variety of stakeholders that are part of this program.
So I want to share with you some of the nuts and bolts of how our program runs. And I think it's going to be very familiar to a lot of folks that are on the call, especially if you're familiar with the EPIC-N model. I would say the IISC is really implementing the model that was formed back in 2009. So the University of Oregon and Iowa, both kind of like simultaneously, or Oregon, I think Oregon gets credit for doing it first, but kind of like launched this city-year partnership with some specific characteristics that formed a model that has now been replicated by a lot of institutions. So it's probably going to be familiar. And again, like Nick talked about, preaching to the choir. So if I say things like co-create, I'm sure a lot of people understand that we're building collaborative partnerships with communities where we're really thinking about like how do we prioritize value to them as well as to our students. So that's why we talk about reciprocity and mutual benefit. And just a little bit of the backstory about how IISC formed. It actually started in the School of Planning and Public Affairs, which at the time was known as the School of Urban and Regional Planning, just with graduate capstone projects with one single discipline. And it doesn't take long to learn that communities have a lot more needs and opportunities than one single discipline can accommodate. And so it expanded quickly to become campus-wide. Now we're working with units all over campus. So it's not just about planning, it's about engineering and art and law and a lot of other departments built around the ideas that communities are sharing with us. Something that's unique about the model and typical of the EPIC-N types of partnerships is that we kind of form our partnerships around a city or a community over the course of a year. And those communities get a lot of energy and resources. So it's kind of geographically or place-based engagement where we focus energy and resources into a single area. It's often a city. Sometimes we've worked in a county. We've had a couple of regional partnerships. One of them was really interesting because it was formed with a watershed management organization. So that's neither a city or a county, but it still fits our definition of community. And so most of the work that we do is with those community partners who we consider to be full partners for that year, but we also have additional capacity to do work outside of those partnerships. And that's what you can see here on the map of where we've been across the state of Iowa. So since 2009, we've been able to cover quite a bit of the state. The white star, hopefully you can make out where that is. That's actually where Iowa City is, and Iowa City has been a partner. That's where we are, the University of Iowa. And so you can see a lot of things have been concentrated on the eastern side of the state of Iowa. But like Nick mentioned, we're really thinking about like how do we demonstrate the value of our institution across the entire state, and we encourage communities on the western side to apply as well. And that sometimes can mean driving 5 hours to go work with them on projects, but we're happy to do that as well. So since 2009, we've had 21 partnerships, which here on the map is represented by the stars. But we also can do projects with communities outside of those. And so we've worked in over 60 communities in the state of Iowa since the beginning of the initiative. 25 campus departments. I actually think that we undercount the number of hours that students and faculty devote to a partnership, but it's easy to say 10,000 hours of people hours are put into a partnership, because I think we blow by that number by a long shot. So it's safe to say that there's 10,000 hours among all of the projects that we do. And we often have 200 and more students that are involved doing community-based work. Since 2009, we've completed 400 completed, which means supported, managed, identified, did all of the project development, 428 projects, and we do typically about 40 projects a year. So a little bit of background about how we form our partnerships. We invite communities, first of all, to let us know if they're interested. So our method of doing that, and we've adjusted a little bit, is just to, first of all, request letters of interest with some prompts explaining the interest that they have in partnering with the University of Iowa. And if we'll set up a Zoom call, and if it seems like a good fit, we'll invite those communities to complete a full application. And then we'll choose one or two of them to be the partner for the upcoming academic year. We usually get a really healthy response, and that means we have communities that we can keep in the pipeline for 2 to 3 years. So we haven't had to actually open up this application process for a little while, because we had enough interest from communities that with really good opportunities for partnerships that we've gone back to them. We'll be opening it again for the 2026-2027 year, but we get a good response using that approach. We commit to doing in the contract that we form with our community partners, we commit to doing at least 10 projects, and honestly, we most often end up doing close to 20 projects. So they know they have some predictability about the number of projects and to some degree the nature of the projects. It is a little bit of a leap of faith because we haven't fully decided what all of those projects are going to be, but because we've been around for a while, I think communities see the opportunity and the value in working with us. We have tapped in, like I mentioned, we have 25 units on campus that are partners for IISC that we can reach out to. And so we have kind of formed a network of faculty members that are really skilled at incorporating community engaged projects into their teaching, or maybe doing research as well. Another thing that we do, and I'll share a little bit more about this too, is that we give our community partners some idea about the types of things that we have seen as requests, or the types of projects that we've done before, because there is a little bit of mystery about what a partnership is. So we don't want to dictate what should happen in their community, but we can tell them that we've done lots of downtown plans, we've done lots of art, we've done lots of trail projects, so they can see the long history of projects that we've had and have some sense of the types of things that they know that we can do. We're not limited to that alone, so if they have ideas, our job is to find a potential partner for them on campus. So we have some flexibility around that. And then this graphic that you see here is kind of our hub and spoke model. So my role as a staff member for IISC is to kind of wrangle everybody on the university side. And I have a counterpart on the community side who we consider to be the community coordinator. And we're staying in close touch, chatting every couple of weeks, just to make sure that we have a good handle on all of these projects and all of the moving parts that are going on. But we really kind of like shift after we get started, we shift the collaboration to the project leads within those communities. So if we do 20 projects, we want to have more than one person involved, and that's getting emails from lots of different groups of students. So we try to encourage our community partners to have a broad base of people that can serve as project leads, that have potentially some content expertise, and they're the ones that are going to be the first point of contact for faculty and students. So this is an example of what a partnership year could look like if we were to imagine 15 projects. So you can see on the left side of the screen there, the types of disciplines that might make up a partnership. I do see we have a hand. I'll finish explaining the slide and then I'm happy to break for a second. So this is kind of what a partnership would look like. That we have, you can see that there's 4 engineering projects. That's simply because we have a lot of engineering students, so we can match a lot of projects. And as we communicate to our partners about the types of things that we feel good that we have the capacity to work on, we give them these topic areas, and so that can help them imagine the types of projects that they might request us to do. Laura, go ahead, please.
I had to figure out where my unmute was. I just wanted to direct you. We do have a question in the chat, and I didn't want us to get too far along before in our conversation. It is saying that actually now another question in the chat. So I don't know if you want to take a look at that.
I see them. Yeah. So I'm happy to answer this. Thank you very much for those questions. So who are the community contacts you work with? I would say that our kind of natural partners for IISC are often local governments. And so they're the ones that we're most likely to see applications from. And it's also probably because we do a lot of work to promote the opportunity to local leaders through our networks. Like we have an Iowa League of Cities. And so we have a lot of statewide partners that are well connected to decision makers in the community. But we're really, first of all, looking for people that have kind of the ability to enter into that kind of relationship. And often that's going to be a city administrator or a director in some capacity. Once that happens, we definitely want to collaborate with others in the community, recognizing that cities alone or people in authority don't necessarily always have all the answers about things that should happen. So we have ways that we work with others in the community. But yeah, so community is a lot of people, and we actually don't restrict how we define that. So if somebody wants to make an argument that they represent a community, then we're open to the idea of a partnership. Yeah, all of the documentation generally goes through a decision maker, an administrator. If it's a city, we have some templates that can be used for city councils. For example, we have a resolution template, so it can go to that governing board so that they can get buy-in from city council or board of supervisors. Community sizes, that's a really good question, and that's kind of explains why you saw stars and dots on our map of Iowa. Not all communities have enough projects to become full partners for IISC. So we've worked with communities as small as, I would say, around 5,000 people. There are no super large cities in Iowa, but we've worked with most of them. And so communities of like 70 to 80,000 people. But I think our sweet spot is probably 10 to 20,000. That's where we're going to have most of our partnerships. Yeah, so another way, it sounds like there's maybe some questions about like, how do you tap into rural communities? So we do get interest from communities that are small, maybe even not 1,000 people, and they do have needs and we want to work with them. A good way to kind of like for them to consider how we can prioritize working with them as a full partner is that they may have needs, but there might be other communities in the county that are also interested. So if it's a small community, we think about like, could this be a countywide partnership or a regional partnership where we're satisfying the needs that they have, but maybe we're able to kind of still focus energy into that geographical area. Nick, do you want to jump in with any of this? There's another question here too.
Yeah, and this is a good question. So the vast majority of the students that do work with IISC, it's all course based. So these are all courses where students are getting full credit. As I see the question about how do you get students engaged, it's through coursework. So this is a traditional community engaged learning model. We do have on occasion students that are not tied to a specific course, particularly when it comes to art projects. where there might be an art student that's doing this that's not part of a particular public art course. But when you look down the list of project examples on the screen here, the majority, I mean, almost all of these, actually all of these are tied to courses. So.
And there's probably one other thing, a really important thing that's, I think, embedded in the previous questions that I should share, and that is we do request a financial contribution from our community partners to do the work. So when we talk about this full partnership where we contract for at least 10 projects, we request a financial contribution of $50,000, 50, and that pays for all of the project expenses and then supports the program and the costs for staff and things like that. So there is a cost to communities. We don't want cost to be a barrier, so we're open and flexible to working with communities when the need arises to work around that. But that's a big part of how we function, is that we receive the support from our community partners, and they make another really big contribution as well, which is in the form of staff time. So this work, if it's truly collaborative, does not mean that they hand off a project idea to students and then those students disappear for 16 weeks or a semester and then come back with answers. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens over the course of the project as well.
And David, to answer your question about like lab courses versus non-lab courses, the majority of the classes are courses with syllabi that where we're matching project, the project goals with the learning objectives of the course. There are some that are like capstone based courses where the whole point of the course is for the students to do, like our engineering projects, for example, are a capstone course where the focus of the course is to do a project, and so that jives nicely. But many of these courses are courses where the students are also learning content, and we're matching the project needs with those learning objectives.
Also, just to clarify, when I said $50,000, that's for like the whole bundle of projects. So they get the 10 to sometimes 20 projects altogether for that investment. And it hasn't been a tough sell, so to speak, because we're often doing work that might cost them more money to otherwise, or they receive some kind of like, there is a pretty solid return on investment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those things as well. So project costs, if we do a single project, I would say it's easy to kind of lump everything together, and then you don't have to like piece out project by project what each one of those things is. We have that information. We might say a graduate capstone project is probably at a higher value to community partners than an undergraduate semester project, right? So there's some differentiation between those things. But when we do the standalone projects that are outside of the partnership, we have some costs between $1,000 and $5,000 to do those as well. There's some good questions. I think maybe we'll get through here and hang on to those questions, and we'll definitely answer them, and maybe some of the answers will come through as we shift toward our lessons learned portion of the presentation.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll say is that one of the questions that was just asked about faculty, we'll get that in a second. So hang tight, everybody. But as Travis mentioned, we wanted to sort of share some lessons learned. We've been doing this now for many, many years, and I think some of these are probably going to sound familiar to some of you, and others maybe are some things that are sort of unique to the IISC model. I think this first one is sort of the uniqueness of this IISC model or this Epic End model, which is this idea of bundling projects into a partnership year, and the opportunities that are unlocked with that. One of the things we hear on a yearly basis from communities is that when we bring together hundreds of University of Iowa faculty, staff, and students with community partners into one community, it helps everybody sort of coalesce around project ideas. It helps build community around this sort of big initiative that's happening. it generates a lot of momentum and a lot of community pride in sort of trying to move forward on these issues. And the other thing is that I mentioned earlier, students feel like they're part of something bigger. When they see that there's hundreds of other University of Iowa students also working in this community around issues of quality of life improvement, sustainability, those kinds of things, it makes them feel like that they're really contributing to this bigger effort. And so, you know, there's certainly a ton of community engaged learning at Iowa that is happening that is sort of one-off projects in different places. But I think that there's a lot of value to be thinking about sort of this bundled project approach that is the EPIC-N model. Our second lesson learned, I think, is also particularly applicable for a model like this where you're doing a bundled project place-based approach, and that is the importance of a community engagement professional being involved, somebody like Travis. Community engagement professionals are incredibly important, and I'm sure I don't have to sell any of you on this. They're incredibly important across the board, but in a model like this, they sort of act as the glue that holds this whole sort of swirling partnership together. They help to sort of translate what's happening here on campus to the community and then vice versa. If you've got 20 projects that are going on in one community, particularly maybe a community of 10,000 people, that's a lot of coordination that has to happen. CEPs understand the academic world and they understand the community world, right? And one of the things that I think is really valuable with this is that they're also trained to do this work well. So this picture that's up here, this is actually a program that we run on campus to train community engagement professionals on how to do this kind of work. So I would think it would be really valuable to always consider involving a community engagement professional in this kind of work. And I argue that community engagement professionals are really important for any community engagement work at a university. So Travis was just talking about the financial contribution, that $50,000, which I know maybe sort of can be a bit of a sticker shock for when you first hear it, right? But one of the things we've really found is that having that buy-in from a community, having that sort of additional investment from the community can really elevate the partnership overall, and it can yield better outcomes, and it also comes with higher expectations, which sort of circles back to that previous slide about the importance of having a community engagement professional involved with this who can sort of ensure that this goes well. You know, anytime partners have a skin in the game, just like if we have a skin in the game and they have a skin in the game, then we're really ensuring that that there's mutual benefit and reciprocity that's happening here. And the other thing that I'll say is that, you know, we don't across the board at the University of Iowa, it's not like every community partner is paying for community engagement or community engaged learning projects, right? But there's something unique about this IISC model, this EPIC-N model, where you're having hundreds of students, multiple projects in one community that really sort of elevates the game. And that's where we've seen very little problems from community partners saying, no, we see a lot of value here. And honestly, every year there's examples where a community will say, we just saved $60,000 on one project because our engineering students were able to move us well along on this bridge project and we didn't have to pay consultants as a result of that. Or it easily generated a $100,000 grant for us, right? So the return on investment is there.
I guess continuing this theme of kind of like meeting expectations that we just talked about, especially as we engage in partnerships with a financial component. There is, and honestly, I think that this is one of the reasons that we have remained successful and that we have a good response from communities about the opportunity to partner with us is that we work really hard to ensure that we meet or exceed, I mean, I'm going to say exceed generally their expectations. And that is, that's something that is done very intentionally. So our we have a really core mission of providing unique, beneficial learning experiences for students. But we also take this other responsibility very seriously, which is that communities have invested in us, and therefore we need to produce value to them. And that's even more true because our community partners are increasingly resource constrained, and so they have very tight budgets. Like Nick mentioned, if we can ultimately actually save them some money, then they're really happy to be working with us. But we have to complete the projects in a way that meets their expectations. And this lesson learned is that it's really important to think about like who is responsible for ensuring that we are meeting the needs or expectations of the community partner, right? And there's a few things that come to mind. I would say that ideally, it doesn't necessarily rise to the level of a community engagement professional has to complete the work, but that is how I start my summers often, is that students do really excellent work, but sometimes it needs some additional polishing. So I spend some time in the summer after the end of the semester continuing to add and enhance the work products. This could be done. Right now I'm the only staff person, so it's me, but there will be somebody else joining very soon. But this is one way that could happen. Maybe a better way is to budget time within the course of that partnership, that semester where students are involved, so that you see the draft of the final deliverable, as we like to call it, in time for additional changes to be made by the end of the semester. The other ways that I've seen it happen across other institutions, that there might be a team of graduate research assistants that are hired and helping do that work as well. Or maybe your faculty members are so committed that they will take on that responsibility as well. Yeah, so yeah, Laura, that's a really good question. I do think that there are other programs like IISC, ASU, I think in particular, has a program where grad students are helping them put together, maybe not polishing like the final work products, but they put together executive summaries so that they have something that is really accessible and very professional. So that's something we'll be exploring this upcoming year as well. Number 5 on our list is helping community partners understand their role as educators. And again, this is still sticking with this theme about expectations. So community partners may perceive themselves as clients, right? Like they've made this investment and they want to see an outcome that meets their needs. It's really important to always kind of like keep in mind that we're doing something really unique together, which is pairing the educational experience with the community-based work. And so I would say that helping your community partners, which would be a project lead for students right there, helping them understand that they are, in fact, educators because they're contributing to the educational experience of those students. Both gets them excited. They really like thinking about that, but it also introduces a different mindset as opposed to they've hired somebody to do work for the community. They might have more patience, offer more guidance, but they really value that. And I think it's an important role for everybody to kind of understand that at the core of everything that we're doing, education is happening for sure, right? Along those lines, we spend a lot of time trying to develop the tools and frameworks to help students be successful as they collaborate with community partners. And so for us, that means over a long period of time, we've developed a lot of resources that they can access, and that might be tools or information about how you have a public engagement event, or it might be even just how to like have an agenda to run and facilitate an efficient meeting. So we have lots of templates for things like agendas. We have a Gantt chart template, lots of those things that can help students be successful. Just checking the chat here. The other thing that I like to think about, because I am a member of the faculty in our department, and so I am the faculty advisor for lots of projects. I like to think of the beginning of our collaborations as something, and these are students that are like just months away from doing this work professionally. That my role is to kind of model the professional behavior that I believe can help projects be successful. This last piece here about positive feedback, I think is really important. It is, of course, appropriate to offer constructive criticism, to acknowledge what needs to be changed or improved, but it's really, really important to also communicate to students what they're doing really well, because they so desire to do good work on behalf of the community partners. They are bought into, in my experience, bought into to this work, that they also need that positive feedback to acknowledge the investment that they're making as well. So spend time, of course, talking about how you might tweak things along the way, but recognizing the really great work that students are doing as well.
So this next lesson learned is one that I think, is Travis and I work on a regular basis. And that is that as much as we all think that this is the best thing since sliced bread, not every administrator on campus has experience with community engagement. Not every administrator completely understands what this is all about. And so part of our job as community engagement professionals, especially my job as the director of community engagement, is to work with our administrators and to help them understand the value of this work. And so that means, presenting at workshops and seminars on campus, showing up when we can at anything that's going on. Travis does that really well. He attends as many things as possible to talk about the IISC. But there's a lot of value to this work right now, and I think many of you probably are experiencing the same thing as we are at the University of Iowa, which is there's a real opportunity for us to explain the value of higher education and to advocate for higher education right now. And community engagement is one of the best ways that we can do that. It's important for us to work with our administrators to ensure that they understand that and know what we're doing. And oftentimes it's as simple as inviting them to specific things, asking them to come with us to a community event, asking them to come to a final celebration of the IISC to see the incredible work that's happening. A lot of times that can go a long way. This slide sort of speaks a little bit to the question about how do we incentivize faculty, because one of the things we have learned over the years is that faculty aren't always, in fact, maybe are often not recognized and rewarded for their community engagement work, particularly in the promotion and tenure process. I will say at the very beginning of the IISC, what we did is actually financially incentivize faculty to join the program by giving them small stipends to be a part of the IISC. Over the years, I think the benefits of the IISC administration, having Travis and others be able to work with the faculty in their class, work with their students, help to manage the projects, that's a real benefit. But the other thing we've done is to actually look at how can we change promotion and tenure policies at the University of Iowa to recognize this work. And I'm proud to say that as of this year, we now have new guidelines for community engaged teaching and research at the university that recognize work like the IISC. It gives faculty the opportunity to actually be recognized and rewarded and promoted, not based on work that's other than community engagement, that's sort of like an add-on, but actually based completely on their community engagement work. And so this is one of the things that we really recognize as an institution that we needed to be focused on. And it's something we've been really working on the past couple of years. So and another lesson learned, and this is something that I think we've seen over and over again, is that there's often a perceived ideological division between maybe some of our faculty, staff, and students, and maybe, you know, rural communities across the state. Iowa is obviously a rural state. We work with, as Travis mentioned, a lot of communities that are like 10 to 20,000 people. But the truth is that what we found is when we focus on local issues, when we focus on working together in partnership with local communities, those perceived ideological divisions really sort of start to go away because we're all focused on a lot of very common goals. We're focused on trying to improve affordable housing. We're focused on workforce development. We're focused on trying to figure out how to mitigate the constant river flooding from, you know, the nearby river. We're focused on how do we improve cultural amenities. When we focus on the local issues, some of the state and national noise that can sometimes filter in really gets blocked out. And so we've had a lot of great success working in places in Iowa that I think somebody external wouldn't look at and say, oh yeah, that's a natural partner. But we've been able to do that because we're all really interested in very common things, very similar things. And we find that a lot at the local level.
I see we have about 10 minutes left, so I think the next few slides I'll go through quickly here. I would encourage everybody on the call, if you are at any university and you're thinking about in community engagement, is don't overlook that your arts and humanities partners on campus. This has been something that's been both kind of fun and exciting for us to include in our partnership, and has maybe in a way that engineering or planning projects don't provide some instant gratification. And so the way that we do this is we set aside a portion of the financial contribution that is specifically for doing a public art project. And you're seeing here a photo of a city council member. A city was eliminating the old metal tubing playground structure in a park, but they didn't want to just haul it to the landfill. So one of the city council members wondered if we could turn it into a sculpture, which an artist sculpture from our campus did. And this was done. This is now on the front lawn of an elementary school. And it's supposed to be like their hawk, like their mascot. And that part in the middle can be, they swap out kids' artwork. So it was really fun to do this, and it happened during the course of the partnership year. So these projects come with real costs, so you'll need to identify your funding mechanism for that. The way that we do that is, of the $50,000, we set aside $5,000, and that pays for artist fees, materials, all of those things. And then the other thing that I'll say about tapping into arts and humanities is that I spent a lot of time working on things that might seem to require like a technical solution, so water quality issues or something like that. I often think that the technical solutions exist, but we need to like compel people to adjust their attitudes or behaviors so that we can work toward those solutions, right? So arts and humanities is a really great partner for accomplishing something like that. Here's another fun picture of a mural. We did a whole series of murals in one county, and this was an example of one. We worked with a Sudanese immigrant population to put artwork at a neighborhood center. So really fun stuff can be done when you bring in your arts and humanities campus partners. Probably don't need to spend a lot of time on this one again, but setting expectations at the beginning of partnerships is incredibly important. And so we do that through the contract that we have. Here's what we commit to doing. The other thing that we do is develop a project agreement or with a project description that explains both the nature of the problem and the work that's going to happen. We also try to imagine what success looks like, or what the end of that project looks like. If we talk about the final deliverable, like what are we aiming to accomplish? Which is not solving all of the problems. Sometimes it's a piece of that, or it just supports decision making. And then it's useful. There's one particular class that we have the students themselves develop a memorandum of understanding, where they scope out the project. That's a useful exercise. We do a lot of that work behind the scenes, but if you can include students in that process, that's also a very useful learning experience for them. And then also just the roles and responsibilities, who does what. You do have to talk to community partners about being responsive, joining bi-weekly Zoom calls if that's the form of communication that works, but we outline those things from the very beginning. And assess impact and celebrate success. This has been hard for us to do because we're always kind of like moving forward onto the next partnership, but it has been really valuable for us to take some time to look backwards and to ask community partners what happened after we left. And that's where we hear the really great stories that are super validating and can communicate that to the next partner. So are they implementing projects? How did it engage community in new ways that you didn't expect? Were there any financial benefits? And the one that I now get to talk about that Nick has mentioned already is that a community partner on a trails engineering project got a $60,000 credit from the consulting firm they went to. So that paid for the partnership and then some, right? And then the other thing to do is just to celebrate all of that stuff, right? Like tell the story of what you're doing. We have a final event, and this is a partnership. This was a final event in the city of Dubuque where we had a partnership, and the mayor is holding the symbols there, but there's Hawkeye marching band people, alumni of the Hawkeye marching band peppered throughout the state, and we had them surprise everybody at the event, showing up playing the Hawkeye fight song or things like that. And then if this type of model sounds appealing to you and you would like to explore or investigate it further, we will have this, as people have asked about, we will share our slides, and then this webinar recording will be shared, but I would encourage you to reach out to the EPIC-N network. And so most of the things that I've talked about kind of fit into this model that has been designed by EPIC-N. And in this photo, you're seeing some really great people that are incredibly happy to provide support to your institution. So Ada, I think I saw on the call, Gavin. So this is an organization that exists to support universities and community partners to form these type of partnerships. And so I strongly encourage you to research and look into EPIC-N and connect with the staff there if this is something that interests you.
And our very last lesson learned slide is just to say that if it's not evidenced by now, we're big believers in place-based engagement and the idea that focusing our community engagement efforts around local issues and local communities helps to build trust and understanding and sustainable partnerships. Even when an IISC might move from one community to another, we have long-standing relationships that result in additional projects and partnerships with the university. And this has been a really successful model for us here at the University of Iowa.
We used up most of the time. I'm happy to stick around for any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Nick and Travis. This was really great. I took a bunch of notes, and I've been to a couple of sessions at different conferences on the EPIC-N model, and I know Gavin really very well from his time with Campus Compact. So it is a great model, and I'm sure there are folks on here that would maybe love to do some chats afterwards, but I do want to open it up. We have about 3 minutes left, so we can maybe take one question. If anybody's got a burning question they want to ask now, either raise your hand or pop it in the chat. We do have one. It is, how does someone connect to the faculty engagement core?
So if the question is how does the IISC, what we just talked about, connect to the Faculty Engagement Core? So the Faculty Engagement Core is a program that's run out of the Office of Community Engagement. That's a good example of that training that I talked about. And what happens is the faculty that are part of the Faculty Engagement Core program oftentimes then also are members or are faculty that are affiliated with the IISC. So our hope is that if faculty at the University of Iowa go through the Faculty Engagement Core program, which teaches them how to do community engaged teaching and research, they're going to be able to do their work well then with IISC. And Travis oftentimes comes in and actually is presenting at the faculty engagement core program. So
So it sounds like that program is almost like a boot camp,
it is.
a learning
It is.
experience. Yeah,
It is. Yep.
great.
And yep. And so it helps to sort of launch faculty into programs like the IISC. Although IISC has been around long enough that there's a lot of good faculty already in it. So
Great, great. Well, I think this was wonderful. You've got some folks that that may want you to come visit them, it looks like. Um, Thank you again so much for this great presentation. I put this in the chat earlier, but yes, they will be sharing their slides and we will get the recording out to everyone that registered for today's webinar. It'll probably come out later this week. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Impact Award webinar. We will have 3 more webinars that will start up again in the fall. So be on the lookout for the registration information for those last 3 Impact Award webinars. And we will be so happy to have you back to have everybody join us. Again, thanks to Nick and Travis for highlighting their amazing program. And we're so happy to have everyone join us this afternoon. We look forward to seeing you all next time.
Thank you very much.
thank you all.